powered by Dainik Bhaskar. We are now moving into a session that promises to be a feast for the soul. We are about to explore a text that has defined love, devotion, and divine interplay of human emotions for centuries. The session is titled The Eternal Beauty of Jaydev's Geet Govind. The Geet Govind is not just a poem, it is a universe of rhythm and romance. It captures the divine love between Radha and Krishna. But to understand its true depth, you need a guide who understands the nuances of translation and the heartbeat of ancient wisdom. To lead us into this world, please welcome our distinguished speaker, Dr. Vandana R. Singh ji. And to converse with her, we have a moderator whose profile is as diverse as impressive. Please welcome Ms. Rakhi Gupta Bhandari ji. Please welcome them on stage with a huge round of applause. Dr. Singh is a celebrated author and a literary translator who was conferred the award of recognition for outstanding contribution to literature by the Chandigarh Sahitya Academy. She has an incredible portfolio of 12 translations from Hindi to English, bringing the works of giants like Krishna Sopti, Gitanjali Shri, and Premchand to a global audience. Her deep engagement with spiritual text is evident in her notable work, The Bhagavad Gita, a life-changing conversation, and her podcast series, Gita Talks. Beyond literature, she is a prolific educator, having authored 42 books on English language teaching and communication skills published by the Oxford University Press. Let's give her a warm welcome. And our moderator, Rakhi ji, is a senior IAS officer of the 1997 Punjab Cadre, currently serving as the Principal Secretary, Ministry of Food Processing. She has held critical roles across ministries, from Home Affairs and Water Resources to serving as the Director of NIFT. But she is not just an administrator, she is an artist at heart. A recipient of the Stree Shakti Puraskar and the President of India's Silver Medal, she was recently recognized as the melodious voice singer of Punjab and received the Dr. Sarojini Naidu International Award in 2025. She has represented India in the UN Human Rights Council and has released several devotional music videos, making her the perfect voice to discuss the lyrical beauty of the Geet Govind. A scholar of the Gita and a melodious administrator, this is going to be a beautiful conversation. Dr. Singh, Rakhi ma'am, the stage is all yours.
Thank you so much for that very, very flattering introduction for both of us. But of course, she deserves it much more. I'm purely an administrator, but just an artist at heart. So let's start with Lord Krishna. सबसे पहले कृष्ण जी का नाम जब हम लेते हैं, आप सब यहाँ पर जो बैठे हैं, I'm sure. So I'm going to change my languages so that each one of you is going to be very comfortable. Whenever we take Lord Krishna's name, what is the first thing which comes into our mind? Can you just give me a visual imagery in 2 seconds? Anybody? What is the first thing which comes to your mind from there? Anybody? Morpunk? Joy? Bansuri. What else? Sorry? Soulful love. You got it. So she's got it right. You've all started with the dots and you're coming to the soulful love. From there I'll take on, when we talk of Lord Krishna, we have a lot of imagery in our mind, and this has since generations been continuous. I will now talk to Dr. Vandana Singh, who's written this wonderful book on Jaydev's Geet Govind. Now, this is a text which not many of us have explored, but all of us are literally living it in our lives. It's only when I realized that the dots were connecting from sculpture to painting to poetry to art to music to dance, did we get back to see that what was Geet Govind all about. So Jaydev in the 12th century had conceptualized this beautiful poem in which he talks about Krishna and Radha. And I'm going to start my conversation with Dr. Vandana Singh, ma'am, if I may refer to you, please, as how did this whole thing, and because Jaydev's Geet Govind is not something which comes to everybody's mind suddenly. So we talk of the Gita, which is the text which gives us all the wisdom, all the knowledge. But to talk about Jaydev's Geet Govind is a very different context, a very different paradigm altogether. Let me start by asking you, how were you inspired? And what's your book about in a snapshot, if you could tell everybody? I'm sure nobody's really read the poetry of Jaydev's Geet Govind, but you'll get to know, because I know when you go back from this conversation, you're all going to pick up versions, irrespective from whether from the chat GPT or from wherever, but you're going to read about it. It is so intriguing when I started reading this book and ma'am's interpretation of the entire book. I got so many subtle nuances into how paradoxical love can be, from divine separation to romanticism, moving on to spiritualism, and there's a huge road. So ma'am, if I may now please move my thoughts from to yours and ask you to please enlighten us as to how you got motivated into this.
Thank you, Rakhi, for your kind words. First and foremost, I must clarify that, not clarify, I should put this on the table, that this is not a religious discussion. This is not a satsang, and this is not any kind of religious conviction that that is being thrust upon anyone here. This is a study and a discussion of a work of art. And India is one of the few countries where every civilization has its mythology. We know of Roman, Greek, Egyptian, and Indian, of course. But it's perhaps in India that our mythology is interlinked with religion in a very peculiar way. The two seem to be entwined together and therefore are often mistaken for one another. And therefore, any discussion on mythology or any discussion on mythical figures is often confused to be a religious discourse. And therefore, I think it's important to put this point across right at the beginning of this discussion, that this is not a religious conversation. We are discussing a poem here, which is the work of a particular poet's imagination. To answer your question, Rakhi, as to how I got into this, I have been fascinated by classics always. I have been very fascinated by mythology. Perhaps it dates back to the time when I was doing my BA honors from Delhi University, and we had an entire paper on Greek mythology. And it was since then that mythology has had an important place in my psyche, not in my day-to-day life. It's now that when one has more leisure, one has more time, one is able to explore oneself more deeply, that I realize that I'm drawn to it in some perhaps mysterious ways. And so first the Bhagavad Gita happened, and now the Geet Govind, which I know it's a big word to use, but it was perhaps an epiphany. And I found myself getting more and more interested in the subject and reading it and studying it. And it eventually has become a perfect confluence of my academic interests as a student and a teacher of English literature, and of my personal interest in mythology. And my other interest also being the evolution of the thought process, no matter what line of thought that might be, but the evolution of the thought process is of great interest to me. And so to see how a poem was framed and how it came about 1,000 years ago and how it still remains alive with us today has been of great interest to me. Rakhi just mentioned that not many of us are familiar with Jaydev, which is unfortunately true. So I will just narrate a very small story to you to put in perspective as to who Jaydev was. So let us wind back to the mid-12th century, which is the time that the Bhakti movement there are the churnings of the Bhakti movement happening, not just in North India or South India, but across the entire geography of the Indian, I could say the subcontinent. And at that time, a boy is born in a Brahmin family in a small village. The Odiyas say in Orissa, the Bengalis say in Bengal, but he was born somewhere. And this boy grew up to be a scholar of Sanskrit. He was given the name of Jaydev by his parents. And he decided to be an ascetic. And so he moved around from village to village, living on alms, living on whatever it is that that people gave him to eat. And he was so wary of growing an attachment to anything that it is said that he did not even sleep under the same tree for 2 nights, lest he get attached to the tree, or lest he starts to make himself comfortable under the shade of that tree. And so he would move from place to place. And he eventually finds himself somewhere near what today is the Jagannath temple in Puri. Parallelly, another story is happening. And there is another Brahmin family, a person called Dev Sharma, who are blessed with a daughter after many, many years of being childless. And this family decides to dedicate this daughter to the Puri temple, and they bring this girl there. And there, the parents feel that they are being spoken to by the deity, and the deity says that you give your daughter to Jaydev. So the father says, but Jaydev is an ascetic. I'm not going to give my daughter to a monk. But scene 2, Jaydev has to accept this girl as his wife. Very, very, most unwilling lover, unwilling husband. But they enter into matrimony. And there starts their love story. So for those of us who are not believers in arranged marriage, here is one arranged marriage that really did wonders. So the marriage happens. The marriage happens first. The love presumably comes later. And Jaydev starts to play the mridangam in the Puri temple. And Padmavati literally dances to his tunes. And it is this jugalbandi between the two, him playing on the mridangam and she dancing, that eventually evolves into a love poem, which today we know as Geet Govind. Geet, as we know, means song, and Govind is a name for Krishna. And since they were in the precincts of the temple, and since there was Krishna in the air, I suppose, it was inevitable that their own story perhaps evolved into that of Radha and Krishna. We do not know. And therefore, my interest in the evolution of thought remains as to, did this poem start as their own love story, or was it always intended to be the love story of Radha and Krishna? So that very briefly is the introduction to the poem. And I hope that answers your question, or have I over-answered it?
No, it's enchanting always to listen to whatever is said about Lord Krishna. I think each one of us is very intrigued by his life, by his antics, starting from Makhan Chor, being very nutcut, doing all those antics which every mother loves to see her son doing, and eventually ending up in this wonderful, should I say, relationship or connection with Radha. Now she, ma'am, attains so much of importance in our text, and we'll be all surprised that when we used to say that women, now getting the women context into it, so basically it's the Ardhanarishwar, I think, which plays up somewhere when we talk about Radha ji. And this becomes now, it's a very common phrase whenever you go to Vrindavan, everybody says Radhe Radhe. So which means that the woman was given so much importance. Also, when I read more about this, I got extremely intrigued by the fact that Radha, somewhere, if you kind of get into symbolism, it represents a Jivatma, and Krishna represents Paramatma. So somewhere that's the connection between Jivatma and Paramatma. That means an individual soul and the whole. Ma'am, could you elaborate on this love which happens between Radha and Krishna in the text? Because we read all about his antics, but about his romantic part, which is very real. And romantic is not just a basal kind of a romance. It's not just limited to physical pleasures. It's limited to a spiritual salvation a kind of a moksha, if I may say. And if you could just elaborate on this love, how it happens, this continuum of, which builds up between, till spirituality, I should say. How does this happen, ma'am, in this entire text?
Yeah. I'll attempt to answer that, though it's very hard to really um, document and articulate how love between a divine couple like Radha and Krishna might have happened and how it blossomed. But I think it's also very important to understand why, amongst the many reasons why Geet Govind fascinates me, is how this poem, how its footprint grew organically at a time when clearly there were no communication tools of the kind that we have with us today here. This poem is written somewhere in the eastern part of India, and we see that the imprint of this poem just grows. It goes down to Kerala, it moves up to what we now know as Himachal, it moves up to the upper reaches of the hills, it moves up to Kashmir, it moves to the northeast, and we see it being referred to in Rajasthan. So for a poem to find feet of its own and to literally travel on its own and to um, to catch the imagination of people in various geographies is in itself a very fascinating thing. And in the morning, those of us who were present in the morning inaugural session, um, it was said that sometimes the work of art becomes larger than the artist. And Geet Govind is clearly an extremely good example of that, where we see that the poem has outlived the poet in such a way that today around us, those of us who are living in the Indian subcontinent, or I should say India rather now, we see manifestations of the Geet Govind all around us. You see Radhe Krishan on calendars, you see Radhe Krishan painted on the walls, you see Radhe Krishan diaries, you hear Radhe Krishan song Sham Dhale Jamna Kinare Aja Radhe Aja Tujhe Sham Pukare. Where is this coming from? Where is this whole story of Radha and Krishna on the Yamuna? Where is it all coming from? It is coming from Jayadev. But sadly, we have forgotten that the poet is Jayadev, and what has come down to us, the essence of it, as it was said in the morning, and the khushbu of literature, the essence of literally, this is what it is. And to Rakhi's point, what she said earlier, that Geet Govind is one of the few poems that lends itself very well to multiple forms of art. So whether it is songs or music or painting or dance, sculpture in stone, you see Radha Krishna everywhere. Another very interesting aspect of the poem is that prior to the Geet Govind, which means prior to the 12th century, in all the Vedic texts, we see hardly any reference to Radha. There is a reference to one gopi who seems to be more prominent than other gopis. But the name Radha it's very, very diluted. The credit of making her literally into a star goes to Jayadev. Jayadev creates Radha into this larger than life figure, where today, I dare say, if I ask anyone here to name Krishna's wives, I think we'll have to think for a minute. Can anyone here name Krishna's wives? He had 8 wives. आप तो expert हैं गीत गोविंद की. आपको allowed नहीं है ये.
No, we want one of the backbenchers now.
So it's very interesting that we do not know the names of Krishna's wives, or even if we do, we have to think for like a split second before we say, oh yes, it is Subhadra. But Radha Krishna, yes, this works. So these are the names that go together. We have other names like we have Shiv Parvati, we have Sita Ram, we have Vishnu Lakshman, but they are all married. Radha and Krishna are the only couple who remain a love couple right through. It starts with love and it reaches a pinnacle of love, and that is the love story of Radha and Krishna, and perhaps that is where the joy of it lies. That all the perils of matrimony, I think, are completely escaped, and therefore, it's a happy start and it's a happy ending. And
You were saying something, sir? Lavasa, sir?
there is a sorry, Ashok. Yes, please. Also, no one wrote a poem on them. If they do, then I will write a book on that. So there is also a phrase which I discovered while I was doing my research for the book. There is Swakriya and there is Prakriya. That means Swakriya is love within marriage, and Prakriya is love without marriage. So the love of Radha and Krishna that we see here is outside the I would not use the word bond here, I would say outside the confines of a marriage. And yet, in the Indian psyche, it is not viewed as anything unacceptable. It is quite magical how we as a society who are otherwise quite prudish, not prudish, we are prudes, we are judgmental, we are very quick to attain this moral high ground on everything. But when it comes to Radha Krishna, everyone here says, ye theek hai, this is okay. And this is Radha Krishna, I mean, what can you say?
I also see this, ma'am, as God being shown as emotionally vulnerable somewhere. So when we talk of God, we think of the perfection. So our collective consciousness, if you may say, the God for us represents something which is perfect, which is 100%. But here in Jayadev's Geet Govind, ma'am, it talks about God being as emotionally vulnerable, as innocent as any human being, with everything that we carry within us. So all the love, the emotion, the vulnerabilities, the sensibilities, the falsities, and if I may add that, everything which happens within a normal human being has been portrayed in Jayadev's Geet Govind. If you could also elaborate on this, ma'am, I was reading about this and about your book. It specifically talks about the pining lover. It talks about the bhav, the shringar ras, how the music comes into effect. So all the bhavs which we have, that, viraha, pining, longing, teasing, then again wo manana, rootna, and how God is trying. So while, as she just mentioned, that while Radha ji is looked at as, as a very normal gopi, but she attains the significance of a primus inter pares, if I may say, that is the first amongst equals of the gopis, and who attains the heights where Lord Krishna is trying to convince her, ki please, ruto mat. I mean, what could be luckier and what could be better in music, in dance, in painting and sculpture with that bhav. So with that bhav, ma'am, I'll hand it over to you. Please explain to us the subtle nuances of this pyar and, virha and all these beautiful ras which we have.
So, Geet Govind, at the risk of being irreverent, I must say here that in parts, Geet Govind really reads as a racy thriller, and which could also be one of the reasons that it attained the popularity that it did. In my book, I have given a translated version of the original poem, but the book is not on translation, so therefore it is a transcreation to give the readers an idea of what the poem is about. It is not a scholarly translation, because there are many other scholarly translations that are there. What I have done is, you can say, it's not a dramatic version, but it's a transcreation. And just to give you a flavor of that, I will read some portions from it. So the poem is divided into 12 cantos, which is sargs in Hindi, and these are made up of 24 songs. So there are 24 songs in the Geet Govind. These songs are not evenly spread out over the 12 sargs. So one sarg might have one song, another might have four, and so on. And the story is really quite simple. The story is a very standard lover's story. There's lover's quarrel, there is the separation, there is the jealousy, there is the desire to meet again, there is the anger when you actually meet, and eventually there is the union. So really no surprises there. But what is immensely interesting is to see that lovers' quarrels have remained the same for the last 1,000 years. Not much has changed there. We might think that we have evolved into some amazing creatures, but not really. I mean, if we were to take away our smartphones, we would be back to Geet Govind. So, and that is what immortalizes the text. So, just to give you a flavor of what Rakhi was just saying. So, in the initial scenes, we see Radha because she knows that Krishna is with the other gopis, and Radha is saying here, "O Sakhi, the pain of separation is profound. As the pure waters of the Yamuna flow, a haven of bliss and tranquility, enchanting love play flourishes in the abundant groves of Vrindavan. In the embrace of spring, immersed in serene joy, Hari dances with maidens with youthful grace. O Sakhi, the pain of separation is profound." And then she's imagining how all the gopis are vying for his attention. And Radha is telling her friend, "Adorned in a yellow garment and a garland of wild flowers, with sandalwood paste glistening on his azure form, his earrings sway gently. The allure of his face is remarkable, radiating a delightful sweetness. With honeyed charm, Hari wins over with natural suppleness and grace. O Sakhi, every maiden enchanted and ravenous vies voraciously for his attention." So Radha is pining for Krishna, and she's burning with jealousy. And then she's remembering the times when they were together before he sort of dumped her for the gopis. And so she's saying here, "O Sakhi, I recall Hari's irresistible allure. Like nectar from his lips, sweet melodious notes emanate from his flute. Eyes restless with mischief full, his head sways gently, making his earrings dance and dangle against his robust cheeks. O Sakhi, I recall Hari's irresistible allure, his playful banter, his enchanting laughter, his gentle teasing." And at this point, I must narrate another very short story that this is of course all folklore, that when Jayadev was composing this poem, at one point he wants to bring out Krishna's complete surrender to Radha. And to make that scene convincing, he is imagining a situation in which Krishna is lying down and Radha has her foot on his chest. And even for somebody with Jayadev's imagination, this is blasphemous. How can anyone, most of all a woman perhaps, have her foot on the chest of Krishna? It's unthinkable. And so as the story goes, and this is of course just a story, it might well be true, who knows. As the story goes, Jayadev is writing, and his head is in a turmoil, and he's not sure whether he should write this, and he feels that, he feels perhaps his book might be banned if he write this. So, so he decides to go and take a dip in the Ganga and come back and complete this phrase. So he has not eaten his food. He leaves his food untouched. And his wife would usually, like a good Hindu wife, she would eat after him. So he goes to bathe in the river. When he comes back, he sees that the couplet has been completed, in which it is written that Radha, and there is a passage, that Radha puts her foot on Krishna's chest. And he also sees that his food has been eaten. So he calls his wife and he says, "What happened now?" So she says, "I thought you had eaten, so I finished the food." He said, "No, but I had not eaten. I had gone to take a bath in the river." And then they sort of looked at each other and said, "Are you thinking what I'm thinking?" So it appears that Krishna himself appeared and he completed that phrase, and that is how. So there are these very many stories that go along with this, some true, some not. But end of the day, it's all imagination, it's all in the head, as they say. And therein lies the magic of Geet Govind, I think.
Lagan, there was this wonderful line, Radha kyun na jale. So
Yes.
kyun na jale, it's a natural passion, natural emotion. और जलना बहुत ज़रूरी है क्योंकि जलने के बाद जो मज़ा आता है उसके बाद मिलन का, that can not be experienced. That was in Lagan also. So now, ma'am, I'll move on to another very interesting aspect which I saw in this. A lot of nature has been entwined into the entire text and the prose and the poetry. I call it everything. I think it's a living, civilization in itself. So a lot of nature, as in when they talk about spring, they talk about, so it's metaphorical that they talk about spring and they talk about, how they meet. When they talk about night, they talk about the pining and the longingness. When they talk about autumn, when they talk about winters. So everything, entire nature has been entwined so beautifully in the entire book, in the entire poem rather, that, it's somewhere down the line you kind of keep wondering that how to kind of differentiate the two. Or should you in any way try to differentiate also? I want to pick your thoughts on this one, ma'am.
So this is something that I think comes from our own 20th century environmental consciousness. So we are now incapable of looking at a literary text and absorbing it just on its literary merit. We want to apply our 20th century isms to it. Now we want to see what is the socio-economic setup going on here, what is happening in the eco world, what is happening here and what is happening there. And that is what made me think and look at the flora and fauna in Geet Govind. And the number of life forms, if I can say so, that are in the book. The number, and especially the chakora. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the bird, the chakori and chakora. The chakora is this bird that's always looking at the moon. It is eternally in love with the moon. And it is the ultimate example of unrequited love, because the moon is, of course, unaware of the chakora's feelings. Then there is, so one was what the poet has put in it. The second half of my chapter on flora and fauna also deals with this very interesting aspect of how, when Geet Govinda started to be painted in Rajasthani paintings, in Rajput paintings, in miniature paintings, in Pahari paintings, we see a lot of local influences there coming into those paintings. So if the poem was being written in Odisha, clearly, I assume there are no pine trees in Odisha. But then if it is a Himachali artist, you see Radha Krishan, Yamuna, and there is a pine tree at the back. So those are very interesting things as to how, because it's a love story, and as they say that the world loves a lover, everyone wholeheartedly embraces the poem, and you want to appropriate it, and you want to make it your own. And so you are imagining that the Yamuna is flowing, somewhere in the hills of Himachal, or that the Yamuna is flowing in Kashmir, or that the Yamuna is now flowing in the northeast, and so on. So this is the other thing where we see the local wildlife and the local animals being depicted in paintings of Radha and Krishna, who are supposedly in Vrindavan, which we know is in the plains of Uttar Pradesh. So that is also an interesting aspect of the poem, how it has been accepted. The other aspect that I have also touched upon in the book, and which is not a particularly happy one, is the prevalence of the tradition of Devdasis in the Jagannath temple. We are all aware that it was a very accepted thing, and it is not clearly mentioned anywhere whether Padmavati was a Devdasi, but if the story is that her parents came to offer her to the temple, I think we could assume that perhaps she would have been a Devdasi in that setup. So I think it throws a lot of light on that also, in the sense that yes, the custom is abhorred. The custom is now, of course, banned and is no longer prevalent. And it resulted in a lot of abuse of women. It resulted in a Brahmanical appropriation of women and so on. So I brought out those aspects also. But what is equally important and what runs parallelly is also the fact that the Devdasis were exponents and custodians of art and dance, and they passed it on from generation to generation, and many of these art forms are alive today, perhaps because of the efforts, whether voluntarily or involuntarily, made by the Devdasis. So there is a chapter on the Devdasis also in the book.
Glad you touched on that, ma'am. But I'll also say, I'll add on to that I have seen that over time things evolve, things change, and some things which were appropriate for one particular point of time, may seem inappropriate at another, but maybe at that point of time they were the most appropriate. So I would also now get you on to the same thing that we were talking about. That is, I want to know that how do you see philosophy, psychology, and sociology? Now I'm talking about the modern subjects which we have classified ourselves. How do you see this entwined with this ancient text called the Geet Govind by Jayadev?
Yeah. So, talking of philosophy, I think we are all aware of the social hierarchies that unfortunately are still prevalent in our country today, but were, of course, completely dominant 1,000 years ago. And it's also very interesting to see how this work, this love poem, was Brahmanized by the Brahmins, let us say. And it is given a status of almost a religious poem. I'm not sure if it was designed to be that. I'm not sure if it was meant to be that. But then it became that. And today, if we look at Geet Govind, you can look at it from multiple prisms. You can see it as a sociological study of those times in which I just mentioned that we had aspects like the Devdasis and so on. But since the text was enacted out, let us say, or it was conceptualized in and around the Puri temple, it simply by the nature of the discourses happening in those surroundings, I'm assuming, it took on divine proportions. And we see how gradually what some could view simply as a physical act of love eventually becomes a divine act of love. And how the union of Radha Krishna from simply being a man-woman union evolves into that of being an act of procreation or an act of love, or it becomes divinity itself. And so something that was perhaps just a love poem takes on certain philosophical aspects and it takes on another level. And so some might look at it as, and even today, the poem is sung in the Jagannath Puri temple every day. It is sung in many Kerala temples every day, even today. And what is fascinating is that it is part of a very interesting dance form called Satriya in Manipur. So from Manipur to Kerala to Himachal to Kashmir, the poem has taken a very good grip of the Indian psyche, as I said, yes.
I would love to give a sample of that. So I got 2 lines, ma'am, and I'm so tempted to take the liberty of using these lines if permitted. श्रित कमला कुच मंडल धृत कुंडल श्रित कमला कुच मंडल धृत कुंडल कलित ललित वनमाला जय जय देव हरि. Please join in. कलित ललित वनमाला जय जय देव हरि. दिनमणि मंडल मंडल भवखंडन दिनमणि मंडल मंडल भवखंडन मुनिजन मानस हंस जय जय देव हरे जय जय देव हरे. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. You know, it was when I started reading about this and when I started reading about your book, I was so tempted because I used to hear these lines, but little did I know that they were from Jayadev's Geet Govind. So a lot of it, when you go back today to your normal workspaces, you'll realize these facets coming in front of your eyes now, since you are now well versed with this entire text. You'll realize that this comes to life for you in many, many ways. And another last question, ma'am, which I would probably, I think we have time. Can I go on? We have some more time?
5 minutes.
So we'll wind up. So I think my last question, ma'am, to you would be now, that how does this entire text glide so seamlessly through art, through culture, through genres of time even, and also internationally? So boundaries, how does somebody sitting in Boston or somebody sitting in Finland talk about Radha and Krishna in a way which, you know, and with so much of love and with the same amount of faith and devotion? So if you could elaborate what you've written about that in your book.
Well, I have to say, Rakhi, I don't have all the answers. But because the topic itself is so elevated that one can only attempt to address it. But the reason why I think this is popular is that those of us who are familiar with Krishna, we see that Krishna is the one, even though we have multiple gods to choose from the Hindu pantheon of gods, but Krishna is one God who at every stage of life encourages some form of bhakti. So it took me a very long time to understand how Krishna as a child is revered. What is there in a child that makes bhakts go into a frenzy about him? What is there in an adolescent? I mean, here is Krishna who's flirting with other women and so on, and there is Radha pining for him, etc. And one would think that really, I mean, is this godly or what? But Krishna is one God who embodies all the different forms of bhakti, which we all know. I mean, there is Vatsalya, which is the mother and child love. There is Das, in which, like we see Hanuman, he is the Das Bhakt of Ram and Krishna. There is the Shant Bhakti, where people are in meditation and so on. And there is Madhurya. And what we are seeing between Radha and Krishna is Madhurya Bhakti. That is the Bhakti of romantic love. So Krishna is the only single God who can accommodate all forms of bhaktis. And if in all of these, I think I can safely say this on behalf of all of us here, that if there is one emotion that human beings, not just here, but across the world, if there is one emotion that we all aspire for or wish to experience, it is the emotion of love. There are multiple emotions. There is anger, there is ego, there is jealousy, there are so many of them. We don't wish to experience those. But the one that we do wish to experience is that of love. And one last point. So Krishna being the ideal man, the complete man, like the Raymond's complete man. So he's the Shringar Murtimam. He's the ultimate Murti of Shringar. And so the world needed something or someone to complement that. And his wives, I think, came later. And wives, I don't think, can sort of come into that role. And so what Jayadev has created here is Radha as Raseshwari. So she is the ultimate of all ras, while Krishna is the ultimate of all ras as the male god. Radha is the ras. So we have Krishna as the Shringar Murtimam, and we have Radha as the as Raseshwari. And it is when the union of these two happens, I think one has to be devoid of human feelings to not just love every minute of it. So I think perhaps therein lies the popularity of Geet Govind and its continued popularity, because I think in a lot of ways it is aspirational. Thank you, Rakhi.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I think you've got us all into this world, the subliminal world, as they say, and each one of us right now has Lord Krishna and Radha and the gopis dancing in front of us. It's beautiful, and let me end with this thought, ma'am, saying that in Geet Govind, devotion learns to dance, and philosophy learns to sing, and love discovers that it was always divine. So thank you, each one of you, for being this lovely, patient audience, and Jai Shri Krishna. Let me end with this.
Thank you so much for this wonderful session. Can we give them a huge round of applause, everybody? Yeah, we can take 1 or 2 audience questions. If anybody has a question, you can raise your hand.
And also talk to the author outside.
Yeah, also you can obviously talk with the authors outside. Anyone has a question? If you have, you can raise your hand. You will get a mic.
I think everyone is
Yeah, they are in this state of devotion and love. Thank you so much. Today we didn't just listen to a text. Yeah, okay. Somebody wants to ask something, you're saying?
Nobody wants to ask.
Okay, yeah.
Getting up.
Okay, yeah. Today we didn't just listen to a text, we experienced devotion, rhythm, longing and divine love as it flows through Jaydev's Geet Govind. This conversation reminded us that some of the works in literature do not just age, they eternally breathe, speaking to a new generation. Right, for Dr. Vandana Singh ji, thank you so much ma'am for opening the layered universe of Geet Govind for us and showing how the translation becomes a sacred bridge between centuries, languages and hearts. Thank you so much ma'am. Rakhi Gupta Bhandari ji, ma'am, again your reflections brought such a rare harmony. You said so beautifully, you sung so beautifully. It was, we are all mesmerized over here. And now to mark this enriching exchange, I would like to now invite Brigadier Sanjay Agrawal ji, a founding member of the Society for Culture and Environment, to kindly come forward and present a memento to our distinguished speakers as a token of gratitude. Can we welcome him with a huge round of applause? Also,
I would rather request a very distinguished guest amongst us, Professor Salvatore Baboon, all the way from Australia.
can we give them a huge round of applause? Ladies and gentlemen, this memento is a symbol of culture and continuity, created especially for Bhopal Literature Festival by Padma Shri Durga Bai. This artwork reflects deep interconnection between nature, devotion, humanity, and storytelling, values that resonate perfectly with the spirit of Geet Govind. Can we give them a huge round? Yeah.
And to the exquisite moderator come singer.
Yeah. Thank you so much everyone for your attention and for your openness to beauty. May this rhythm of Geet Govind stay with you long after today. Thank you so much. Please stay with us here at the Bhopal Literature Festival. We'll continue with more inspiring conversations. Thank you so much.